In this lecture, we'll talk about getting started with finding and gathering your secondary sources. Now, when you first start thinking about a historical topic, you want to go ahead and try to think through how to find your sources. One of the most compelling ways of finding your sources is to, well, that's not working. One of the most compelling ways of finding your sources is to use a linear method devised by Elizabeth Frick in 1995, or described by her, in order to begin hunting down these sources. And we'll talk about mining footnotes in just a moment. But if you think in this direction, then you're likely to realize that the sources that you stumble upon or that you find in the very beginning can lead you to better and better and better sources along the way. So look at this graphic. You might begin with the tertiary sources to find overviews and access points and things like that. Then you'll progress because you'll look at their bibliographies or their footnotes or what have you, and then you'll progress to the monographic literature, which is a narrower set of topics or narrower research, and you'll look at those footnotes and you'll look at those bibliographies, and you will then find other sources, including journal articles that will lead you to even more secondary sources and primary sources. Now, I understand that in a class at this level, you are likely to stop at the monographic literature or the journal articles in order to gather your data. That is, gather those things that you will use as evidence. That's fine, because those are easier to get, and with the limited amount of time and the limited amount of resources and the exercise nature of the thing that you are writing right now, then I don't like this at all.
Recording started.
In this lecture, we want to talk about how to get started finding your research sources, particularly your secondary sources. At least give you some kind of idea about how to get that process going, and we'll refine that in future lectures. One way to think about how to gather sources and gather information is to look at Elizabeth Frick's 1995 linear method, which is on the slide before you right now. This linear method of thinking about research strategies starts you out, as I've suggested in the past lecture, with the tertiary sources. Tertiary sources like encyclopedia articles will give you an overview of the topic, and will help you refine your claim, and will lead you to access points, concepts, and might even have bibliographies or lists of sources in the form of footnotes or other types of citations that you can then refer to. You can then go to the monographic literature, that is, books. Now, many of you will stop at history books, and this is where you gather all your data. And for the level at which you're operating right now, and for your level of experience, that's satisfactory. This is overall an exercise in how to put together a quality research paper, and gathering your information from monographs at this level is okay. It's better to use primary sources in history, but nevertheless, the tertiary sources will probably turn you on to some of the monographic sources. Some of your direct searching will turn you on to monographic sources as well. Those are narrower than those reference book sources like encyclopedias and other tertiary sources. But once you begin to understand the the subtopics and the contours of your big topic, you can look in the monographic literature and narrow down your topic. A way to narrow your topic even further is to look at the journal article literature. These are the narrowest articles or the narrowest writings. They're sharp, they're to the point. Even if you think, gosh, this guy is just going on and on and on about nothing I can understand, it's substantially narrower than a book on that same subject might be. All of these things are available to you either on the web or in the library catalogs or in the library's available databases. And by library available, I mean Troy Library. Okay, some tertiary sources that might help you find secondary and even primary sources or give you overviews or things like that are reference works like general encyclopedias, such as the printed Encyclopedia Collier's or Britannica, which is not going to be printed after this year. It's going to be online, or even Wikipedia. Wikipedia, boy, really be careful. It does not go through an editing and vetting process by experts. It goes through editing and vetting by the general public, and that's okay for what it is. I don't trust Wikipedia's interpretations, though I frequently trust their chronologies, their access points, and I certainly trust their bibliographies, at least to lead me to more information. Okay. There are specialized encyclopedias and dictionaries like the Encyclopedia of Southern Culture. Now, even though I ask you to not cite or use in your required number of citations tertiary sources like general encyclopedias, if you use specialized encyclopedias, then that's okay in most instances to include in your bibliography, and that will count toward the required number of sources that you must have. Again, the Encyclopedia of Southern Culture, the American National Biography, these are both specialized directories, dictionaries, and encyclopedias. Another tertiary source in which you can begin to find an overview and access points are handbooks. For example, the multi-volume Handbook of Middle American Indians, which is available at the Troy Dothan Library. If you're working on American Indians, this would be a good reference book to use to find out what you might consider thinking about and writing on. There are also bibliographies that are lists of books by subject. And this is extremely helpful because it can provide you with ideas that you did not have before. Again, these are lists of books by their topic. The American Historical Association's Guide to Historical Literature, a mouthful, but is a published book, last published in 1995, that provides topic after topic. It's 2 full volumes. It covers topics around the world. If you're dealing with Southern history, then the Journal of Southern History each year publishes one of its articles in its journal is a bibliography of articles and books that have been published in the past year or so that have to do with topics in Southern history. If you're working in British history, there is the Bibliography of British History. And I've been very lucky in being able to do Google searches and find, using my subject heading and my and the word bibliography, in order to generate bibliographies, some of which are purloined from other websites, some of which are purloined from Wikipedia or purloined by the writers of Wikipedia about the topic under consideration. Book review indices are a particularly beneficial mechanism, database for you to use to judge the value of a book that you have that you have chosen to look through. Sometimes a book is just a book. Sometimes it's an important book. There are some of these online available through the databases through Troy University. One is Books in Print with Reviews. Gee, how much easier is it than that? Another is, for example, the full text historical databases like JSTOR, which I advocate that you use in order to find book reviews as well as journal articles. You can also use guides to periodic literature and newspapers, such as the Reader's Guide to Periodic Literature, which is not available through the Troy databases but does exist. And many libraries have printed versions of this. You can look under a topical heading, which you may have to think about for a little bit and try to judge how that has evolved over time from, let's say 1902. Look under hotels in 1902 to find out what current magazines of 1902 were writing about hotels. And they were. Poole's Index to Periodic Literature is the 19th century version of the Reader's Guide. Poole's Index looks at 19th century magazines and indexes over time the articles arranged in multiple magazines, arranged topically. And that's good through the 19th century. It's not as large as the Reader's Guide, but it works exceptionally well. Geographic guides. History students have a tendency to be interested in, but frequently lacking in the details of geography. So geographical guides like gazetteers are exceptionally important reference sources for pursuing a topic. Place name guides, like in Alabama, Foskew's Place Names in Alabama are extremely important. Dead towns in Alabama, county gazetteers are very important in the study of the lay of the land, you might say, and the built environment. They can give you lots of good access points and put things in context for you that might not have been in context before. Well, when you start finding these sources, then how do you deal with them? How do you get more information outside of just taking notes from these sources? Can you find other sources from these sources? And the answer is, of course, yes. The process is called mining the footnotes. You have to remember that all authors leave information out. They don't put every note they took into their work. They can't. It just doesn't work that way. So there might be more information for you in the source that your source relied upon. So maybe you want to, if you find a passage in a source that you like, look to see where that author got his or her information, and then go to that source to see what other information is there, and keep following that trail if you can to get to the bedrock source, which might be a seminal work of secondary literature, or it might be some primary source itself. Ask, where did the author get his or her information? Look at the citation. If you're reading and you say, oh, this is really good data, I need to take this for my own work, make a note, make an appropriate note, and then look to see where your author got their information. How do you do that? Look at their citations. Find that source, and then do it again. Rinse and repeat. Do it again. Do it with that second source. Do it with that next source. Do it with that next source. Another way of doing this, and this works particularly well when you're looking at textbooks and generalized books that are scholarly but do not have the apparatus of footnote or endnote citations, is to pillage the bibliography. That is, look at the author's bibliography and see what sources they use. Now, it's not going to tell you that the information in this paragraph came from that particular source, but it will tell you that the author referred to this list of sources, and you can probably figure out which one to go to get more information for your work. Okay, so we start out with the linear method of thinking about topical information. Linear method begins with tertiary sources, moves to secondary sources such as monographs, and then on to even narrower secondary sources, that is, journal articles. There are a number of reference works besides encyclopedias that can help you on your way that include bibliographies, book review indices, guides to literature, geographic guides, and specialized encyclopedias. And finally, when you begin finding your sources, mine those footnotes. Where did those authors get their information? Then go to where those authors got their information and do more of your own research. And with that, once again, I thank you for your attention.